This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Nothing in this episode is medical advice, and I am not telling you to use, take, or purchase anything. Always do your own research and consult a qualified professional if needed. Let's talk about one of the biggest questions in the peptide space right now, and honestly one of the most fascinating. Can peptides actually influence epigenetics, and more importantly, can you really turn back time? Because that's the claim you're starting to see more and more. Words like longevity, age reversal, cellular reset. It sounds powerful. It sounds exciting. And it also raises a lot of questions. So let's slow this down and really understand what's going on. First, what is epigenetics? At the simplest level, epigenetics is how your genes are expressed. Not your DNA itself, but how your body decides which genes to turn on and which ones to keep quiet. Think of your DNA as the blueprint and epigenetics as the switches that control how that blueprint is used. Those switches are influenced by a lot of things. Your environment, your nutrition, your stress levels, your sleep, your activity, even your age. Over time, those signals change. And as they change, the way your genes are expressed also changes. That's a big part of what we experience as aging. It's not just damage. It's also changes in signaling. Changes in what your body prioritizes. Changes in how efficiently processes run. Now here's where peptides come in. Peptides are signaling molecules. They don't rewrite your DNA. They don't change your genetic code. But they do send instructions. They influence pathways. They tell your body to shift focus in certain ways. And when you start influencing pathways, you start influencing gene expression indirectly. That's the connection. So when people talk about peptides and epigenetics, what they're really talking about is the ability to influence those switches. Not flip everything back to zero, but adjust the way your body is behaving. Now, can that look like turning back time? In some ways, yes. But not in the way social media makes it sound. You're not becoming younger overnight. You're not resetting your entire system. What you're doing is nudging certain processes in a more favorable direction. Let's break that down. As you age, certain systems become less efficient. Repair slows down. Inflammation can increase. Cellular communication becomes less precise. Mitochondrial function can decline. These are not random. They're part of a pattern. And peptides can influence parts of that pattern. For example, some peptides are associated with signaling related to repair and regeneration. Others influence metabolic pathways. Others interact with immune signaling. When those signals are adjusted, the downstream effect can look like improved function, better recovery, healthier skin, more stable energy. And when people experience those changes, it feels like a reversal. But it's not time travel. It's optimization. Another important piece here is consistency. Epigenetic changes are not instant. They happen over time. They respond to repeated signals. So if you introduce a signal, whether it's from lifestyle, environment, or peptides, the effect builds gradually. This is where a lot of people get it wrong. They expect a quick shift. They expect a dramatic change. And when that doesn't happen, they either assume it's not working or they start stacking more variables. But the body doesn't respond well to chaos. It responds to consistency. Another thing to understand is that epigenetics is not controlled by one pathway. It's a network. Multiple systems interacting at the same time. So even if you influence one pathway, the overall outcome depends on everything else that's happening. That's why lifestyle still matters so much. If someone is not sleeping well, not managing stress, not supporting their body with proper nutrition, the signals are mixed. And mixed signals create mixed results. Peptides are not overriding that. They're interacting with it. Now let's talk about the phrase turning back time, because this is where things get a little misleading. What people are usually referring to are markers of biological age. Things like skin quality, recovery speed, metabolic function, or even certain lab markers. When those improve, it can feel like you've reversed aging. But what you've really done is improve function. And improving function is powerful. It matters. It can change how you feel day to day. But it's not the same as resetting your biological clock. Another layer to this is expectation versus reality. Social media loves the idea of reversal. It's a strong message. It grabs attention, but it skips over the process. It doesn't show the time, the consistency, the variables that go into those outcomes. And without that context, people expect results that don't match reality. That leads to frustration, or worse, misuse. Now, let's talk about what a more realistic approach looks like. Instead of asking, can I turn back time, ask, how can I improve signaling? How can I support better communication within the body? How can I reduce noise in the system? Because that's really what this comes down to. Your body is constantly receiving signals from your environment, from your habits, from what you consume, from how you recover. Peptides are one piece of that. When that piece is aligned with everything else, the outcome is stronger. When it's not, the effect is limited. Another important concept here is adaptability. Your body adapts to signals. That's part of how it works. So if you introduce a signal consistently, your body may adjust to it over time. That doesn't mean it stopped working. It means the response changed. And that's why understanding timing, variation, and overall strategy matters. Again, this is where nuance comes in. And nuance doesn't always show up on social media. Now, let's zoom out for a second. The idea that we can influence aging at the level of signaling is actually a big deal. It's a shift in how we think about health. Instead of only reacting to problems, we're looking at how to support systems earlier. How to maintain function instead of trying to restore it after it's lost. That's where peptides fit into the conversation. Not as a shortcut, but as a tool. And like any tool, the outcome depends on how it's used. So, can peptides influence epigenetics? Yes, indirectly, through signaling pathways and system interactions. Can they turn back time? Not literally, but they can support processes that make the body function in a more efficient, more resilient way. And for a lot of people, that feels like a step backward in aging. But it's really a step forward in understanding. And that's the key. Understanding what's actually happening instead of chasing a headline. Because when you understand it, you can use it better. You can set realistic expectations. You can track meaningful changes. And you can make decisions based on information, not hype. And that's where the real value is. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. I am not providing medical advice or instructions for use. If you have questions about anything discussed, use it as a starting point for your own research and consult a qualified professional. Thanks for listening, keep learning, and stay curious.